Alright guys, welcome to the second episode of the Zanaku Masterclass. In this episode, we're going to be talking about damage and items. Now again, a lot of these stuff that we're going to be talking in this class, it's going to start off simple and it's going to get a little bit more complicated, and I'll explain basically like why and how that works. Now, it seems obvious in this game. Quake Champions is about doing damage and also picking up the items in an efficient way. So we want to kind of get to a stage where like you're doing maximum amount of damage, receiving the as little as possible, and rotating the items in a way where we would have control. So let's say for example, we would collect the items in a particular order so that we could actually make sure that we would get full control and potentially like kill them on the lower part of the map. For different maps, it's going to be a little bit more unique, but generally speaking, you kind of want to get the Mega first and get the heavy armor second, mainly because the Mega is on kind of a... It's always... Both items are always in a dangerous spot, but the Mega is kind of in... how do I say? An area that can be rotated a bit easier. Whereas the heavy on this side, if you get it and you take damage, well, the player who's on the Mega is going to be at just a better advantage. And so generally, the player who gets the Mega can also pick up the light armors while they're after taking the Mega, as opposed to other players who'll pick up the heavy, and once they take damage, they'll lose their stack immediately. And so that's why, generally speaking, the Mega is a better item. And even in this case too, it's kind of a bit easier to get than the heavy. Now, in this video, what I mainly want to talk about is how damage, especially at a pro level, the way that people do damage is very specific. You might notice like in lower level games, people are just kind of running at each other. Things are kind of happening, but at a pro level, it's it can often look very similar, but it's very specific what's happening. The first thing I want to mention is that all the weapons in this game do a lot of damage. And that actually like makes it really hard, but also makes it really easy in some ways too, because it means that like if you're constantly doing damage to your opponent, you're going to be able to like get momentum back quite quickly if you do it right. If your opponent is quite heavily stacked and you're trying to kill them with just very minimal, just the nail gun, it's not going to work. But if they're 60 HP, yeah, it's quite possible actually. There's a lot of things you can do. Now, the main thing I wanted to show you is something that I actually noticed a while, just while I've been watching people play recently. And let's take a moment to look at the Mega. Now, again, it's going to seem quite obvious, but the whole point here is that the next time you play, you're looking for these specific scenarios for you to use it in your own play. So let's take an example like this. Let's say I'm the person who's standing on the Mega, and my opponent is somebody who is just here. And one time I was watching Razy even play recently, and what he did, he was the player that was over there, and the player picked up the Mega, and fair enough, when you pick up an item, you're generally going to take damage. You're the player who's in the open area, and they're able to kind of manipulate you because you're the person who's being predictable. You're the one who's going to the item. So generally speaking, you're going to take damage. Now what he did is that after he picked up, let's say I picked up the Mega, he hits one. Okay, sweet. Then I jump over here, and he hits two. Now again, this might seem quite minimal, but the thing is like, the momentum that action created has such a bigger impact in the momentum of the game. Mainly because he's doing damage that is untraded. And so what you'll see at the pro level, which is what I find, is that everyone is trying to, how I would describe, trying to get the most out of everything. So let's take another example you can also do. Let's say I can rail somebody here, and you can move a little bit closer, and like let's say do a bit of LG damage and back around, and use the weapons to manipulate some kind of like combo. Or let's say I can fire rockets up here to, how do I say, just even damage them even just a little bit. And again, what I'm trying to emphasize is that in this game, we're trying to do damage in a way which has an effect on momentum. So I'll say it again to emphasize that we're trying to do damage to our opponent in a way which has an effect on the momentum of the game, or let's say the rotation of the items. So if I pick up the heavy and I get railed, it's bad. I lose. You take more damage from armor than you do health, and so it's very, it has more of an effect. If I take a battle and I take damage now and I pick up the heavy, you get more efficiency out of it. Seems obvious again, but the main thing we're trying to notice is that when you're playing the game, Again, it's all about momentum. We're trying to look for those moments where it actually creates a bigger impact for what we're trying to do. And now we can kind of combo that a little bit more with timing. Because if you time the items correctly, that was a bit of a coincidence. If you time the items correctly, now you can actually understand how you can even add an extra layer to this. Okay, so we're trying to let's say you're down here. You're trying to do damage to your opponent. He's picking up the item. Let's say he picks up the heavy. You do damage after it spawns. Mega spawns in 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds to hold them off and not be manipulated by the weapons that they use. Because you are the player who's in the worst position, who's picking up the item, but the trade-off of being in the worst position is to get the item. Now again, so what we're trying to see here is how can we combo damage in the story, in the situation that we're trying to create, from when they pick up the heavy, to going all the way to the mega, doing damage, seeing what we can do, and picking up, and this is where the flow of the game starts. Because now we're understanding that the more damage we do, and the more items we collect, the more obvious the decision making needs to be. If no one does any damage to each other, actually you can be in a lot of different positions. Now, if no one does any damage to each other, it actually emphasizes sometimes the major item, specifically the mega, because that's like the only item in the game, well, also the heavy too, but it's the only item in the game that can like do overstack, whereas there's lots of armor on the map, especially on Vale, where you can collect, if you pick up the heavy. And so long story short, just to wrap up this video, combo the damage in terms of the rotation of the items, where it actually creates an effect. A lot of the time when I watch people play, especially when they're learning, is they just fucking hit their opponent. They're just, all they're trying to do the whole time is just trying to hit them, which is great. Actually, do it like I said, the game is all about doing damage and doing it in a specific way with the rotation of the items. But you also want to combo that with the rotation. And so when you do it when you combo with the rotation, now you're actually able to like hold momentum and hold control. And we'll look at it again in another video about what that actually means in terms of control and being able to push momentum. Alright guys, I'll leave it there for this video. I'm sure it was useful. Well, I think it is. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, leave it in the Discord, and we'll leave it there. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.